just been speaking with Sanna from Gamcorp about all things structural engineering in regards to solar and renewable energy systems. We specifically covered roof mount. We didn't get to ground mount. There was so much to cover on the roof that we ran out of time. What I really like about this particular podcast is Sanna's absolute magnificent enthusiasm for life in general and especially anything engineering. He lives and breathes structural engineering. In addition, we talked about his early life, his family's flight from Iran in the 80s and growing up a Wog boy in Ballarat, and I can understand that myself. So without any further wait, let's get stuck into it. I will say that we're going to do another podcast with Sanna. We could have talked for like hours and hours. With this one, we constrained ourselves to a little under 2 hours. So sit back, strap yourself in and enjoy. Thank you. We were talking slightly off camera about your background. Can you tell the listeners, a bit of your background from like where you came from or where your family came from?
Yeah, so my family are from Iran. We're from a religion called the Baha'i faith. It's a slightly different religion in the scheme of religions. It's quite a new religion. And at the time of the Islamic Revolution in 1980, Baha'is, as well as Jews and a lot of other religious minorities, had to effectively choose to escape or choose to deal with a regime that doesn't necessarily include them. So my parents fled in around 1980 and eventually migrated to Australia. Unfortunately, to this day, I haven't been back to Iran. I wish and dream to go one day if it kind of stabilizes. But with the current political climate and the current government, it's just impossible it's very difficult for Baha'is to actually go back and see family and see the place that we were originally from. So I was born in Australia. I very much consider myself an Aussie, but I'd just love to go and see it and just connect with that root of my great-grandparents and so on and so forth.
I think it's funny, isn't it? As you get older, you sort of do connect. Like I want to go to Serbia. My dad was Serbian. He's dead now. And I want to go there despite it being a pretty shitty place compared to, say, the Croatian and Dalmatian coast, which is beautiful. Serbia is not so good. But I sort of want to see where my dad came from. And like you, I was born in Australia, father Serbian, and that's what makes Australia great. The fact we are multi. Otherwise, we'd all be eating meat and one vegetable, not even three.
No, well, this is the thing, and this is the kind of harsh reality of the situation we're in. We don't have the possibility to go, right? It's one thing to say I would love to go, but I can't buy a ticket comfortably because at the border they will ask, where you're from, what's your background, what's your father's name, and then that becomes either turn around or go straight to areas that you're not meant to go. So not to get too political, it's a dream of mine for the political situation to at least create some open borders to allow for a bit of free movement, irrespective of who's in government or whatever else.
Iran's a very cultured place from what I've read about. There's you're talking about a very old culture with a lot going on. Do you keep up with that
Yeah, absolutely, man. The Persian civilization at its peak was one of the biggest civilizations in the world, and seeing the architecture and the mathematics and all the things that came out from this original Persia and the history behind that is it's incredible. And then you kind of see that with all Persians around the world now. Like they still hold on them cultural values and those the beauties of that culture to this day. They try and hold it as much as possible because there's a lot of positives to take from what would be considered in media or whatever else quite a controversial space is really one of the most beautiful places on earth with the original forms of architecture and everything else. So yeah, absolutely. I would say I would love to be able to say I'm more Persian than I am. My wife is quite fluent and whatever else. I can hold a conversation, but nowhere near the depth and the comfort that they have.
Is that because when you came out, when your parents came out, did they want their children to acclimatise to become that Anglo-Aussie and didn't really push the language, or what was it?
Both my parents became teachers and lecturers. And for that reason, they were always trying to improve their English. So it was encouraged, although we could speak and converse in like a very low level, they wanted to always improve their accent, their language, and if you listen to them now, they speak quite phonetically correct and whatever else. So growing up, it was about all of us being better in English as well as them who've come from a new country without the language, without money and whatever else, and been provided this opportunity from the Australian government. So they were very grateful of that, and assimilating for the sake of the future and for their kids' future was really important. Not to say that, like I grew up a good portion of my time in Ballarat, and that's a whole new world of a dialect and whatever else. And so it was about, for them, it was let's get as assimilated and comfortable with the language while being able to be, active participants in the community. They didn't want to segregate in their own small community and keep their language and whatever else. They actually wanted to participate in community activities and help grow the community as well.
So your parents would be effectively intellectuals. I mean, they're both university educated. They've gone on to do things in the Australian university. Was education, was that really first and foremost? Did they drill that into you? Yeah. Sanna, you got to go to uni,
You know what? Both my parents are quite open-minded. I think there was always an importance on the purpose of education and the purpose of, having a holistic understanding of both of humanity as a culture and as a people, but also being able to confidently, have a certain profession or certain, comfort in knowledge. So they would always encourage university, but they're also very open to whatever we wanted to do. If anyone said that a Persian stereotypically is either going to be a doctor, an engineer, or a dentist, or something like that, there's a few avenues. But my sister went into teaching, my brother went into IT. They were quite open to letting us live the life we wanted to live. And I actually didn't want to be an engineer for a lot of my youth. It was actually my high school teachers who said, "You're good at mathematics. Have you considered engineering?"
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Yeah. So that's all right. No, so your parents sound quite wise people.
Oh well, I don't want to toot their horns, but yeah, they're incredibly wise. They both lost their degrees as opposed to in fleeing. They lost and they had to re-educate themselves in a different language. And both of them have their PhDs and did a lot to serve humanity in the form of lecturing in universities. So they're very proud of what they've achieved, and I'm very proud of what they've achieved as well. And they've very much put those cultural identity and just intellect and professionalism and honor really embedded in all our family.
They sound really really decent parents. Now you were born in Australia. Yeah. Where were your early years? I mean, you mentioned Ballarat. Was that later on? Or?
It was a bit later. Yeah. I was in Melbourne until about year 7.
Yep.
And then I did high school in Ballarat. Really,
and survived.
Yeah, and survived. Being one of very few non-Anglo-Saxons.
That would be
school.
Anglo City out of Ballarat.
There was less than probably 2 or 3 people that were not Australian. I remember an Irish guy came to school once, and I was like, "Oh, someone's different," it was. But it shapes you for who you are, right? Yeah. I don't want to get too much into it, but 9/11 happened just as I moved to Ballarat. So you can put the correlation between for a couple of years, I was that cool Mediterranean kid, and then very quickly transversed to, related to not being cool or Mediterranean. But look, again, shaped me for who I am today. Really blessed for all those. And there's a lot of good people as well. I can't speak on. There's a lot of good people with really good hearts and had the right direction and focus as well. And I connected very intimately with all of them.
And I think you said this off camera in a previous discussion that you spent some time in Sydney. Is that right?
No, look,
I got that wrong.
I spent a lot of time in different places in Australia, especially for work as well. I've visited Sydney countless times, and I could say that I've probably lived there, but no, I haven't lived there for a good portion of time at any point. But I'd like to say I'm quite well travelled internationally and around Australia, for whether it's for work or for relationship and friends. I love to get around and see different parts of the world. So
you're at high school.
Yeah.
You're not thinking. What were you thinking about doing before this teacher came and said, "Hey, Sanna, you're good at maths. Maybe you should be an electrician."
I was a computer geek. I loved everything computers, right? And I reckon if I stayed on that path, I'd be in a different world today, right? With what's happened with IT in the last 15 years or so. But I loved computers, and then I had some really influential mathematics and physics teachers at the end of high school that just opened my eyes to the concept. When I relayed that to family, friends, and father and everything as well, they kind of opened my eyes to the concept of engineering. So I would say it was very late in the piece to become an engineer. And even when I started studying engineering, as much as I loved the people I was with at the time, I didn't know if it was the right fit.
What do you mean late in the piece? What
Late in the piece in the sense of, I think it was year 12 where I decided.
Oh, come on,
I'm
that's
gonna
not late.
Oh, it was like, oh yeah, look, some people know what they want to do when they're in year 7, right?
True.
I took a massive shift away from programming and IT, and within a period of 6 months changed all my, future trajectory, and then moved to Melbourne on my own effectively, like with friends and whatever else, but away from family, and started that life with a new type of degree, with a new type of mindset, and very grateful for it now. But at the time, very, tough journey, I would say.
It's still obviously IT in that area is also problem solving, like engineering. So the shift wasn't huge, was it? Like, did you find it quite different?
No, I would say the beauty of structural engineering or engineering in general is you can really see the mathematics behind what you're doing. Like you can enjoy the mathematics, and having the ability to do the mathematics somewhat comfortably is a blessing. But then seeing the fruits of what you do and what that actually means in regards to whether it's a structure or a solar panel or whatever it is, really lets you visualize it. I feel like the disconnect I had with IT was you would program, you would do all these things, but then what that actually meant is maybe some efficiency in the background, or I wasn't very user interface heavy, especially back then. So it was less appealing in that way.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, because with IT stuff, it's you visualize. If you can visualize something, it's zeros and ones. But with engineering structure, you can visualize a finished structure. And, once you probably get really good, you probably see it in 3D as well, underground, the whole bit. So
Absolutely.
I understand. But why structural? I mean, there's so many different kinds of engineering. Why did you go along?
And I still say to this day, I have a profound respect for anyone else that does any other type of engineering. For me, structural is very, it's very physics-based. So there's loads, there's load paths, things go up and down, there's gravity, there's motion. It's pretty straightforward. When you look at electrical engineering, or you look at aerospace engineering or mechanical engineering, there's so many moving parts, so many fluid components, so many gas components that make it so much more difficult to visualize. Again, I'm a very visual learner. So for that reason, every minor subject I had in, whether it was mechanical or aerospace or fluids or whatever it was, I did horribly. And every subject that was like very straight load paths and whatever else, I did really well. So I think in the first couple of engineers, you keep it quite generic in the type of engineering you specialize in. And then after that time, I said, no, there's no way in hell I'm doing any other type of engineering. I'm sticking to structural.
You would have been a good builder.
I did some time in building. I really enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. I think that the reality of building is that you look, not to get too one thing I learned when I was building is I have a strong appreciation for tradespeople and the actual effort it takes to actually for them to execute what they do. And I didn't have that appreciation. I didn't really truly understand until I was on site and saw their effort and their workmanship, and that was incredible. But you also have to deal with that quality of like that headache, that high pressure strung, money strung kind of environment. So as good as it was as a point of learning and really taking your mathematical outputs and seeing how they all come together, which is really beautiful, it's very high strung, very stressful, very, dealing with very unique characters at times.
Hey, have you paid off your HECS debt?
No.
I always I
did a double degree. I did a double degree in business
Yeah, we'll
management.
talk about that, yes.
So because of that, like my HECS was
I was going to say, it'd be huge.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because you've done a double degree and you obviously can speak really well. We've had conversations before. You've presented to GREENROOM about all this nitty-gritty structural stuff for some of the projects, and you understand people, you present well, you can talk, and you seem to enjoy yourself. And there's a lot of engineers who are not like that. They're very strict and rational. So this leads me to the question. You didn't just do a single degree.
No.
You went, that's not hard enough. I'm going to do a double degree.
No, look, I'll tell you what, business is an incredible degree, and I don't want to underrate the value of doing business as a degree, but the difficulty compared to engineering and business degree was, completely on different levels. Right. So business was a bit of a break to the engineering degree with respect. With respect.
No, I can understand that. Yeah.
One is heavily based on mathematics and very crunch time doing numbers, and the other one is holistically looking at people, looking at businesses, looking at money. It's a lot more, it's a different type of brain, right? So I found that the business degree I did was almost a nice, I learned a lot from it, but it was very much activating a different side of my mind.
Right.
Exercise as opposed to a thrilling, passion for business in a sense.
It's as you said, it does activate a different part of the mind, but to have those two skills, they sort of complementary. I mean, with your position now, which we won't go into now, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But it's good that you're understanding people, you're understanding the market, you're problem solving from an engineering perspective. Now, you could have done another degree, as in instead of that double degree with economics, you could have gone and done law or arts or biomedicine or whatever. Why business though? Is it specifically because you wanted to understand what people or
my
practical?
Initially, when I was younger, it was tack on 1 extra year, get 2 degrees. That was the frame on. Like, if I'm going to be there for 4, I might as well be there for 5.
Yeah, right.
That was the initial thought. I think what I learned to appreciate over the time was that engineering is as beautiful as it is. The degree is very math heavy. You have no time to talk about social or dynamics or what it even means to be an engineer in a business. You have none of that understanding. You get your degree and then you rock up to a firm and you think, oh yeah, I'm great. I've done all these math exercises. But then when you get there, you realize, wait a minute, engineering isn't just math. It's probably 50% of it. Customer service is a huge part of it. Understanding what customers want and how to manage that stakeholder engagement is a huge part of it. And they're the stuff you learn in the business degree. In truth, in hindsight, I learned a lot of that early on in that degree and the examples and the projects of that degree. But at the time, picking the degree was like, hey, let's spend an extra year. Let's create some flexibility in case the market goes one way or the other with engineering or
so that's the engineering brain talk, isn't it?
Possibly.
Practical, logical and rational. And you see the options and you're going, I'm going to make this choice. Now, moving on from your university, did you get a job straight away? Like after?
Oh, man.
Come on, you're going to tell us. Tell us.
Like the few engineers that we graduated with as a group of friends, like there was a specific year in the 2010, 11, 12 where there was no engineering jobs. It was
that was just after the financial crisis.
After the financial crisis, building was slow, so building engineering works was little. So everyone was fighting for a job. We had hundreds of graduates, and an ironic stat that came in when I was in my last year was that the previous year, the most amount of the biggest company to hire engineers was actually Woolworths. Right, and the irony is that they couldn't find jobs, so they were doing their existing jobs until they could get it. Like, that's how bad it was, the market was. And then after that, it was actually accounting firms, right? The accounting firms were taking, and finance firms were taking engineers because of their ability for mathematics, even though they didn't study economics or finance or whatever else. So it was an interesting time for us. We really struggled to get work. I was working for free. I was working 3 jobs just to maintain my bills between sales and guarding at doors at night and whatever. I was just making ends meet.
So you're out of you're not living at home at this point in time?
I was at home at 17. So,
wow.
Yeah, with some support with parents, of course, because they were quite close, 2 hours away. So it wasn't like I was across the other side of the world or anything.
Gotcha.
But, at the same time, there was definitely challenges and, making ends meet, paying rent and whatever else, while trying to get a professional job, which was a tough time. And so I was doing some crazy hours, but the internships and the graduate roles that I was in was just to absorb as much as I could, whether it was drafting or structural design in residential world or whatever it was. And I still hold them at the highest regard, these people, because they really taught me a lot of the foundational things that I know now. And without that opportunity, I would not be anywhere near where I am now. So these people hold a really, huge spot in my life. But the truth of the matter is, I was getting paid peanuts compared to what a structural engineer would get paid. And for that reason, it was beneficial for both parties in a way.
But so you that would have toughened you up though a little bit, wouldn't it?
For sure. Like I think one of the best things you can do when you're a younger youth is to get out and move out of home. Like
so
really opens your eyes.
Even when you were, and you're still a young man, right? And I'm a pretty old man, but back then when I was young, people got out when they're 18, 19. It was a standard thing. Yeah. Nowadays, and in the last maybe 10, 15 years, that hasn't been the case. So was moving out at 17, were your parents like, yep, no worries, Sanna, good idea. They go and see what the world's going to, what the world has,
Yeah, and it's huge for Middle Eastern parents to have that kind of trust as well. So they're very forward thinking in that sense. And for that reason, I'm really grateful. Like, Dad was the biggest advocate to say, go, live, experience it. And they supported me in my initial years to try and get me on, like, get my feet settled and whatever else. It was a big challenge. And their support was huge, but at the same time, they knew would be actually what's best for me. They did it themselves many
Yeah,
years ago,
right.
Like they know what kind of character that element builds. You know, the whole concept of diamonds and the pressure and whatever else, right? Like we need to put ourselves in positions where we are actively choosing to figure a way out and better ourselves, etc.
And I mean, they would have been talking from experience as well, because not only they would have gone through whatever they did in Iran, but also having to come out to another country and start again.
Huge.
That's massive. We can't even contemplate that, because unless you've experienced things like that, how do you really bloody well know?
No, I'll tell you the day I think I was 25 or 26, where my dad said, "Remember this birthday?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, why?" He goes, "This is the year where we had to up and leave our country with no money, with no language, with no whatever, and this at this point of your life is what we had to do then." And I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like the thought of not just being forcefully pushed out is one thing, but then just trying to make ends meet the next day is a whole other challenge as well. So yeah, a strong appreciation and a level of strength that I think, you know, knock on wood, no one has to go through, because that's such a difficult thing that anyone has to go through. Yeah.
How important to you, and this is a very general question, is family?
Oh, huge, huge.
Both your blood family
yeah.
and the family that you create.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's in many cultures, right? In many European cultures and Middle Eastern cultures and Asian cultures, like family is one of the main pillars, not, you know, in who we are as a person to this day and who we want our kids to be in the future. Everything else is the steps of life, is what happens in the process of doing it. But family and particularly faith for me are the two huge pillars of my life. And then the last one is just my ability to serve humanity, whatever that be, like whether it's socially or professionally or whatever it is. That's like the three main pillars of my life, stemmed from the learnings from my parents and faith and whatever else.
It's hard though, isn't it? That, and we may stray a little bit here, but in this current climate, it seems almost that family is being methodically broken down, and there's no real encouragement to keep families, especially extended families.
No, it's. I think the world is changing so much, from whether it's, you know, technology's involvement in that and the segregation based on like not having to need to be with people anymore because you have that communication in different ways, whether it's through an Instagram post or whatever else. I think my generation is probably the last of the generations to like not really be involved in that space that much, and the generations after have kind of just really, really embedded their lives on an iPad as opposed to getting out there and whatever else.
That's a podcast for another time. I tell you.
That's a 6-hour one.
That's exactly. Now, with the engineering, again, problem solving, and you're dealing with maths. Now, what I've noticed since we've been talking, it's just come to me that engineers have to, maths hasn't changed much. Like maths is maths, right? Yeah. But they do have to keep up with technology like we all do. So obviously your background and your love of IT, have you found that a fairly easy task to keep up with? Like, for instance, it's a new CRM. Yeah. AutoCAD has changed. You can do this, and now, God forbid, AI.
Yeah. No, tell you what, how much has changed in my time is like the generation before me would have been night and day different. They were drawing things by hand, right? Like that's a completely different and more. You can get a much deeper appreciation of it. From my end, it went from 2D to 3D. And it went from really inefficient to very efficient, right? So we used to draw things 2D and provide it in a few angles, and then explain that process to builders or to whoever it be, different stakeholders. Now they do a 3D model where you could physically put on a glass and walk through the house before you buy it, right? So it's a different world now, and the beauty of technology is incredible. AI, I think there'll be a time where AI will impact our industry a lot. Right now, as it stands, and mark this on the clock because I don't know how much longer we're going to. It's moving that quick. Hey, so right now as it stands, it hasn't had a significant impact because its ability to do coding is really great in the IT sector.
Yes,
but its ability to do mathematic problems according to a standard or according to a specific niche is not there yet.
That's a lot harder, isn't it?
It is, but it's not to say that, like, if we look at the trajectory of what AI is doing, like, who knows, it could be sooner than we think. And that's why I think I've got a huge appreciation for the managing director at Gamcorp, where he explains that engineering isn't engineering. It's you're providing a service, fundamentally providing a service. It's the people that can guide those contractors through that experience, through that service, that are the people that don't want to just AI it and figure out the result. They want support. So
Yes.
you need to be able to provide that level of service and support, more importantly than being a calculator, because anyone can be a calculator.
Correct. No, that's a really. I mean, I suppose that logic does apply to other areas of business as well,
Absolutely.
doesn't it? Because at the end of the day, we are doing business with people.
Yeah.
We are not doing business with AI.
100%.
AI is not going to buy this product or that product. It's
Yeah.
people who actually do, and that's something I think we have to remind ourselves. But
Absolutely.
boy, it is moving.
Oh man, rapid. I tell you
Scary
what,
pace.
the way we are using it right now, and the beauty of what we see in AI right now is our ability to deep dive in certain concepts theoretically. So we say, let's look at the top 5 countries that have a good understanding of solar engineering, because our Australian standard is quite. I don't want to say it's not poor, but it just hasn't gone as in depth as some of these other international codes.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
We can get AI to do a huge deep dive and draw from benefits from different codes and whatever else, and then take that time ourselves to read and review, as opposed to us trying to Google and try and find things. It's given us the ability to really get a deeper understanding of all these elements using tools like ChatGPT and Google Gemini and whatever else.
That's a really interesting insight. Never thought of it like that. With the Australian standards, obviously engineering is all about the standards, and these are minimum guidelines, aren't they? That's what you have to remind people, that this is not best practice. This is the minimum you have to do to achieve this.
Valley, the irony is they don't even hit the minimum half the time, right? Which is another.
We're going to talk about this.
Which is another problem
Wow.
we're facing every day. And not just that, but the standards, like if we think of specifically, I want to talk about solar here, but the standards is very in depth, right? It has the ability to help engineers design quite elaborate structures, like beautiful big structures and bridges and tunnels and whatever else. It's very in depth. For those things, it's incredible. For solar's like a niche industry. It's a newer kind of concept. So it only has, a few appendixes and a few segments that talk about it in a great level of detail from a structural perspective, that it's created so much ambiguity around, what part of the code are you referring to? Where do you get this value from? And even to this day, this engineers will have our conversations around both of us assessing the exact same things, but in slightly different ways. One is more advantageous to the end client, but could be a bit blurry, but in line with the standards, but a bit blurry. And one is based on experience and failures and an in-depth understanding of array frames and whatever else, but could be considered conservative or whatever else, but it's not the truth. It's just the ambiguity in the code allows for that significant difference.
Okay. And the thing is, all these standards are living documents, and they're constantly being updated. And if we waited for them to be perfectly written, like waiting for software to be 100% bug-free, it would never bloody well happen.
Absolutely.
Now, so you've finished your university degree.
Yeah.
Times are tough. It's after the GFC of 2009 around there. Shit has hit the fan everywhere. There's engineers who are serving coffees and doing all sorts of stuff. What's the first job you got?
Couple of jobs, mainly around drafting and residential design. So it was about designing houses. I think half of where is it? What's that suburb after the Westgate Bridge? Point Cook.
Oh, yeah.
I reckon half of Point Cook, the engineering consultancy I work for, did half the houses in all the estates at Point. We saw it go from nothing to hundreds of houses. Right?
I wish they'd put in some bloody social infrastructure.
Yeah,
true.
true.
They've got a lot of issues out there.
Not wrong.
But that was a big growth. That was that area that really
huge growth in that like 2010 to 2015 kind of range. I've designed hundreds of houses in that western region, also Tarneet and other areas in the west as well. There's been huge amount of growth, and a lot of my time was designing those houses. A lot of them are rinse and repeat. There's a lot of similarities between them, but then obviously the geotech, like the soil parameters, might be different and whatever else. So there is it was a really interesting time. Had a lot of fun learning a lot about structural design and residential. Did it over a couple of companies, and again, they taught me half the things I know to this day, because you really don't know much when you leave university. That's a reminder for anyone.
I know.
And they really slap you in the back of the head and put you into gear and teach you how to actually do engineering.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, you leave uni and you've learnt electrical, mechanical, whatever it is, and if you don't start using it straight away, a year and a half, 2 years. What was the square root of, what was it? What was that calculation? And you got to use it, otherwise you lose it. Yeah. So we're talking at this point in time, what was it? Can you say the company, who they were?
Yeah, Nova Consult at the time was the design company. And there was another smaller mob in Doncaster. They have now, I think Nova's been bought out now by another mob, so I haven't kept in touch, to be honest. But Cam, the CEO there, was, again, one of those figures for me that really helped me, shaped me who I was as a design engineer as well.
So do you think how important to you are like mentors like that, people that you meet in your life that
huge.
Yeah.
I'm a visual learner, and I'm definitely like a human interaction learner. Tell me to read a book, I'll read it if I have to read it. But if you explained it to me and we talked about it, we'd get through it twice as fast, and we'd get through a lot more of the nuance that we want to get through, kind of thing. So I love always debating and conversing over problems as opposed to doing like deep research and whatever else.
So these mentors, can you give us some, give some examples of mentors? You just mentioned one person, but has there been other mentors throughout your life? Like, for instance, the teacher who said, Sanna, I think you should do engineering.
Yeah,
was he?
Look, I probably shouldn't have. I haven't probably even told them like well enough anyway. Like, two teachers. One that holds the highest regard is Mr. Simkin, otherwise known as Simo, and Mr. Dole. At the time, both very very fun and whatever else teachers, but very hard. And you're teaching things like specialist mathematics and physics and whatever else. You need that level of control and attention and whatever else. But there were huge influences in my life, absolutely. My father obviously is a big one as well, from the importance of knowledge and whatever else. Brother's a huge mentor of mine in many different ways.
Is he an older brother or young?
10 years older.
Oh,
yeah, so
big.
Born in Iran, and then when they settled back down, had my sister and I. So big mentor of mine. And then from there, it's just been professional mentors, right? Like university lecturers that made a big part in shaping the type of engineering I wanted to do, and then the two bosses I've had that I've had the longest lifespan, like professional lifespan with, was Cam and Martin from Gamcorp, who's taught me more than anyone ever has professionally.
Let's jump back a little bit,
please.
And I want to ask a general question. Like, please. Years and years ago,
right, in
different cultures, the same cultures, there was this kind of a process that a young man had to go through, right? Sure. To become a real man,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
As in to grow up to become a man. And we seem to have lost that. I mean, do you think that a mentor at the right time can really play a big role with, a young man's development? Because we don't have that anymore, do we?
I think we do, but there may be like, I really don't want to get into this too much, but let me say,
why not?
I'll say,
Go on.
I think the word of I had huge influences in my life and mentors in my life, and they were incredible people. They were real people that I conversed with and that helped me through situations, including my friends and bosses. Today's version of an influencer is someone on the other side of the world who has, X, Y, and Z. And there's some really great mentors, right? There's some really intellectual thinkers who are putting out some really intellectual material that are really good to learn for different industries. But there are a lot of characters out there that are appealing to many young men, whether it's because of money or flex or whatever it be. That I feel like the alignment between the word influence or mentor is moved. People are paying big money to do an online course of a guy who does, I don't know what he does. I'm not going to make any comments on it, but the point is they'll be like, oh yeah, he's the best. And I'm like, he's the last person I would want my kid to be like, he's the best for, right? And having a kid now, it puts all that things in a crazy amount of context. So I agree that I think there's always this, there still is a desire for a mentor. I think the avenues and the availability of influencers or leaders or whatever else is a bit blurred right now.
When I said mentor, I mean sort of like wise people. Like a generation or two ago, you could have gone to your uncle, your auntie, your father, or the wise man in the village who goes, he knows his shit because he's lived through this stuff, and he's actually, he's gathered up some wisdom. Because let's face it, most people equate getting old with gathering wisdom, not necessarily so.
Yeah.
That's the kind, so I'm talking about people within the community whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's a teacher or someone who can sort of guide you in the right way.
I think the word there you've nailed on the head is community.
Yeah,
The sense of community is gone over time. And I don't say it's gone, but it's definitely reduced. There was a time in my period where your court was a community, like your court where you'd with the kids in the court or the whatever else. That was something you'd see and you would interact and whatever else. And the older figures, the uncles and the whatever else, they were a big part of my life. I saw them weekly. And I think a lot of that community touch has, in certain cultures, is definitely dropped dramatically. In other cultures, it may not have been there that much in the first place. And it's maintained that.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I think there's certain cultures that'll hang on to this culture.
Yeah.
Hang on to this kind of scenario, whereas there's other cultures, you're right, never had in the first place, and and anything that they did have is fragmenting.
Yeah.
But again, this is a deep area, and I reckon we'll move on.
Yeah.
I could talk about it a lot more because it's really
doubt.
important. I've got a 20-year-old son.
Yeah.
He's second year engineering
Oi.
out at Monash. He wants to do mechanical. And in the first year, they don't get to choose; they do it all. But he's got the engineering mind. And,
God bless him.
Look, he's smarter than me, so that's a good thing because you want your kids to be better than you, don't
absolutely,
you? I mean, really, you do. Do you think that engineers are born like to have a particular kind of brain? Do you think is it nature or nurture?
Oh man, that's such a good question. I like to say that of all the engineers that are in the office, I'm not even close to the top ranks of engineers. There are some incredible engineers that I've had the pleasure of working with where their minds are just like, for someone who understands the concepts, to see what they can do at the highest level is fascinating. It's incredible. There's very, very high level problem cases where I'll ask one of these quite senior engineers the question, and for me, I would have to spend 20 minutes doing mathematics to prove it. And I kid you not, he closed his eyes and he did this. And then he's like, it won't work. And then he's like, it's not going to work by much, but it won't work. And I'm like, how did you? He's like, oh, I did this. The ratio of that is this, and this and this. And then if you look at this and I was like, how do you even do that? So when you say was it born, like there is just some, like, the aptitude of some people is so big that they're made to be highly intellectual.
Yes.
Right. And for them people, yes, they were born to do great things with their mind, irrespective of whether it's engineering or surgery or whatever it is. They're just gifted individuals and their brains are incredible. And I have a huge appreciation for them. And there's a need for them in society in every industry.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Engineering is a huge one. They tend to do really well because, again, similarly to what I said before, they can make an immediate change and they can see the change with their brilliance of their mind.
But that could come through experience as well, couldn't it? Like,
or
you think it's like these people have got the natural process procedure in their head. They can go, bang, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, like, Belly, I'm telling you, I feel like if I was an engineer and did numbers every day for the rest of my life, I wouldn't compete to some of the engineers that is in their 50s or 60s, but are just on another planet.
Yeah, wow.
They're just incredible. Yeah, I can't explain the appreciation I have for their minds.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Now, your parents, are they engineering? Have they got kind of engineering kinds of brains?
No, Dad's in education and economics, more specifically. Mum's in IT.
Well, so they're sort of okay.
Definitely analytical.
Yeah.
Not like in the arts or in like philosophy or anything like that. But I would say more so in their own unique niches. Like, my mum can code in however many IT languages, and right. That's fascinating for me in a different kind of thing.
Are you by nature a critical thinker?
Oh, hugely. I think most engineers are.
Yes.
Right, you have to be.
Okay, so is that nature or nurture?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I think a lot of that is. Yeah, it's a good one. I think it's a bit of both, but I think that you need to practice it. It's a tool, right? Yep. It's a tool like anything is. And if you go for a long period of life without doing it, like you said before, you can lose that ability to be a critical thinker as well. You can be content with life being the way it is and not have to worry about these quite I think it's not. I think us, a psychologist, an engineer would say, "Nah, mate, you can learn it. You just practice it and whatever else." But I'll tell you what, there's a really good example I like to give is math in high school. Math in high school, people are like, I've heard it countless times, my wife included. Oh, I could never do math. And I'm like, I think about it, I'm like, I could really never do math as well. But I knew that you had to repeat that problem 100 times on a piece of paper. And on the 99th time, you've learnt it. But the first 99 times, it goes over your head. But it was just like a learning process that repeat anything, whether it's math computations or even playing music or whatever it is. If you have the attention span and the will to repeat something, to overcome that thing, whatever it is, anyone can really do it. I just think that there's a difference between the great and the people that can do it. I think there's a difference there.
Yeah, right. I'm going to slightly change tact and talk about music. Because before we started the podcast, you showed me the handpan. And you play handpan.
So I played drum kits growing up through high school and everything else, and loved the drums. And then I moved to Melbourne again when I was younger, and you can't have a drum kit in an apartment, right? It just doesn't work.
Unless you want to get throttled.
Yeah, exactly. So we moved to like Arabic drums and African drums, and obviously a lot of the beats and whatever else is kind of crosses over. And your whole life you're told as a drummer, whether you're in a band or wherever it is, they say, keep the time and don't be too loud. Right? You're not the music, you're not the main star here, we're the guitarists, we're the singers. So we're always like just in the background doing our thing, right? And if we're too loud, you get like 10 looks and whatever else. And then this handpan came out, like probably at the start of COVID. I saw it online. I was like, this is incredible. And it's because it's the first time as a drummer where you have control of the melody as well. You have notes. So it took away from the fact of just be quiet and sit in the background. And now you can be your own thing. You're complete. You can hold the meditation tune for hours because it's very light, very easy to play. And it's so new in the scheme of instruments. It's so new that people just are fascinated by it. So I could sit and because it's so, what's the word? It's so fluid, like it just resonates and it has this like meditative tone, right? So it just has this like beauty and this resonance that I would just play it for hours. And my wife got it for me when it was the start of COVID. And that just kept me sane, right? Because you couldn't do anything. So I just kept playing this handpan for hours and hours and hours. And yeah, really, really grew a huge attachment to that type of drum, like just a fascinating drum.
Because it is a form of drumming, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, you're 100% using your hands and your fingers to create a beat, but depending on which tone you hit on this pan, a different tune comes out, a different note. So you have to start having an understanding of what notes pair and what note comes after each other, and then you could just, as a drummer, it just feels so nice to actually play a piece in a sense as opposed to a beat. It's really nice. If any drummers play it, it's great. You get onto it.
So when you improvise, do you like obviously you've got the beat, you understand because you're a drummer.
Yeah.
You know syncopation, you know all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
So when you're improvising on the handpan, do you sort of know after a while? Do you know which notes?
So it was funny. It's a good point you bring up because you don't know the notes. You just know what sounds right.
Right.
And then I had a friend of mine who's an incredible musician, and I took it to him. And for the first time, he'd never played a drum before, but just because he's so in tune with music, he played these notes and these pairs that I was like, oh, that's incredible. How are you doing that? He's like, oh, that's a C minor and a, whatever it was, it's a C minor and a D. And when you hit them together and do this, and that like elevated my handpan game in a sense. Because if you understand music and have the ability to, hold a beat or play with your fingers and whatever else, you can really make some beautiful music with a handpan. So not just for drummers, but especially for drummers, but anyone you could grab a handpan right now, have a fiddle, and within 10 minutes you can make a nice melody out of it. The only negative, the barrier to entry is these bloody things are,
they're expensive,
$3-4 grand. Yeah.
But you're not buying one of those cheap ones made in China.
You got to get a proper handmade one, and that's what, really, you really get that beautiful sound and whatever else. I've played cheaper ones and it just sounds like sounds like hitting a tin can. Like it doesn't have the same resonance.
They take a long time to tune, apparently.
Oh, it's incredible.
I watched a couple of on YouTube and
Yeah.
went, oh my gosh, what they have to go through. It's
Absolutely.
phenomenal. You mentioned off camera that you've used it to calm your child, or
Man, he loves it. He loves it. I've got a baby boy. He's about 13 weeks now. And
oh wow, he's new.
He's new. He's fresh, and he just loves the again that meditative tone. Like it puts anyone to sleep. And we play it on the TV as well, like the recordings of people doing it. And he's kind of listened to it as he was an infant in the womb as well. So he's kind of like, he enjoys it. And well, I think he enjoys it. I don't know. He'll tell me the truth in a couple of years' time. But at this point, he seems to enjoy it.
Is music so it sounds like music's quite important to you.
Look, I wish I put more time and dedication to it. Hey, you kind of get caught up in life and you kind of lose touch with it a lot. I personally did. But it's I think it's important facet for anyone. I think understanding music is an important component of just understanding flow and calm. And again, it goes back to what I was saying before. Like you do anything and you practice enough and you become better and better at it. And that was one of the things at my early age that I realized you can kind of do anything. You just need to put time and attention and practice to it. And poor parents and neighbors who had to deal with my drum kit noises for the years that I was practicing drums. But yeah, absolutely. Music's important as a life lesson and as like a form of just understanding different things as well.
It's important too because it's one of those few things in this world where if you want to do it properly, you have to be in the moment. You can't be thinking of other stuff when you're on the handpan or playing drums or guitar. You've got to be there in the music.
And just to that point, you're 100% right. But to that point as well, you sometimes need to do that just to get out of what's in your head as well. Like as I was saying in COVID, you're just sitting there and whatever else. And I don't want to make this a COVID story, but the whole point is that it was just that half an hour or 1 hour where I was thinking about nothing else. I was just thinking about this music and these beats and it's a tool. It's not necessarily just a beautiful thing. It's a tool for an individual to reflect and to learn as well.
I appreciate you before we started discussing. You played some handpan that you on your phone, and look, it's great. I got a couple of mates who do it, and the sound is just fantastic. All right, let's move on.
Yeah,
you were doing the domestic residential the engineering for these effectively housing estates.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you stayed there, and where did you move on to after that?
So family is in building and development, and they said we've got a couple of houses in Geelong that we want to develop, and I'd take some time off, and with our support and with other people around me, my life support, which I didn't know the first thing about building. You realize quite quickly as an engineer, you might know the math behind it, but you know nothing about building. So I was on site learning from these tradespeople more than any engineer could ever teach me. Like these, especially the carpenters and whatever else, they're incredible, gifted tradespeople. And so I'd gone into development and built 2 houses in Geelong, one which I still own to this day. And
so you own a build?
Yeah,
wow.
That's it. So and now it's a nice place, and it took about a bit over a year, which is a bit too long compared to what we were expecting. But there was a lot of problems at the time, and I built on a hill that's like very steep.
There's your problem.
Yeah, that's mate, and then cross that with the winter period where every rain makes it a slip and slide for your trucks to go up and down, and there's a whole other issue to that. So if anyone's familiar with Highton in Geelong, it's a very hilly kind of high slope land. So did that, enjoyed that, learned a lot from that, and then towards the end of the opportunity, I got the call for Gamcorp. Yeah, and I'll put a bit of background to this. I was a salesperson as much as I was an engineer. I sold phones and worked at Vic Markets and did all these different sales. I even did a summer selling solar panels door to door, right? Like I literally have sold
you've done the hard
yards.
yards.
Yeah, I've done a lot of different sales door to door and in shops and whatever else. So the original job with Gamcorp was a sales engineer.
Right.
They needed a salesperson to increase the flow of work.
Yeah.
But in engineering consultancy, you can't sell engineering unless you understand engineering.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah,
Because, a lot of people use that term sales engineer. They're not bloody engineers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole other thing. Yeah, you could probably do what I do without knowing engineering, but you could do it a lot better if you know engineering, because them conversations in building that trust and understanding the stakeholders, end goal and whatever else, you can visualize then and there, and you can put some really good preliminary concepts together. You can hold that conversation and whatever else. So I started in this role of just trying to increase the flow of work for Gamcorp, while building really strong, lasting relationships with these customers. And at that point, Gamcorp had already established a really good foothold in the solar industry. So then we just took it and exponentially, got a lot more different types of service agreements and contracts with some of the biggest players in Australia and New Zealand. And since then, we've kind of been riding the wave of this last close to 8 years now of this growth in solar.
From a job satisfaction perspective, do you prefer looking at the roof mount solar stuff from a structural perspective, or the ground mount, or both?
Yeah, it's so different.
Because they are different, aren't they?
So different, yeah, absolutely. I would say definitely roof mount is my personal preference. I think the reason for it is that there's a lot of variation in roof mounts. There's all different types of buildings, skyscrapers, warehouses, resi, or whatever it is.
Yep.
And every project's got a unique challenge. Every project you're working on, someone's got a problem and you have to solve it. They don't know what the problem is. You have to figure out the solution, customize the array, change the way you use a custom
And sometimes
system.
they don't even know that there's a problem.
Well, that's the worst part, right? We have to tell them there's a problem, right, before they even get onto it. So I think because of the the amount of different types of experiences you have with roof, I think roof by far. Ground, it's really, is the soil any good or not? Right? If the soil's bad, then it's gonna be.
Is that what you write on your report?
Honestly, mate. No, it is. Title at the top. I'm sorry, shitty clay.
Shitty clay, reactive
it.
shitty clay.
That's it. So
wow.
Right. So there's not as much to it. But in saying that, it's a longer engineering process. So you're talking about a megawatt farm. There's a lot of different types of soils, a lot of different types of wind pressures. So it has its own level of complexity as well. So I'm not going to underwrite it, say it's boring. It's not boring, but there's just so much more variation in roof mount. And then you're looking at different types of systems, whether you're fixing or clamping or gluing or, there's all these different types of systems that just constantly the industry is getting more innovative and you're learning so much more. It's roof mount's a lot of fun.
We're going to get back to the nitty gritty of
Yeah.
both roof and ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're still at, you're at Gamcorp.
Yeah.
And you came in as a sales engineer, but a real engineer who's into sales.
Yeah.
What was the next step after that?
Yeah, it started.
Because you're not a sales engineer now. That's not your role.
No, not at all. No, come a long way since. But I think at the start there was about 10 engineers or so. And now we've got, close to 25 support staff and engineers and whatever else. So initially the aim was to grow the business and to bring in a lot of work, then to grow the team. And then naturally that progressed to, wait a minute, we have so much work that we need someone fully dedicated just to run the flow of work, right, from an operations point of view. So I went from that sales kind of role to more of an operations role to not only bring in the work still, but also make sure that we have the right resources in place to execute the work at the time expectation of the client and whatever else. And then once you have, we do up to about 100 jobs a month.
Wow.
So the natural progression of the amount of staff you have and who does what and whatever else. And you have principals that are involved and oversee every single project. They have to sign off the project. So making sure that everyone's time is in line so that you can execute that number of projects.
And this is Australia-wide, isn't it?
And New Zealand. And I would say New Zealand's probably about 30% of it now. So it's
wow.
It's growing pretty rapidly there as well.
And it's all solar-based?
All solar-based. Now, we do about 20% of work that's linked to solar but isn't solar, like BESS systems.
Yep.
They need foundations and shelters and whatever else. That we have some long-standing clients that have monotone poles and whatever else. So there is other work that we do, but about 80% of our work is strictly solar installation, and then 20% is other types of engineering that isn't building. We just don't do building engineering. Anything nuanced, you want to attach something to a roof, you want to put up a pole, you want to submit these shelters that have equipment in it. We're the kind of guys that help you with all these nuance.
But not wind turbines?
Not yet, no.
Is that out of choice or?
No, look, wind turbines are an incredible thing.
Yes.
Right, and I have a lot of respect for it and a love for it. The truth of the matter with wind turbines, a lot of it is designed by the manufacturers of the wind turbines. So we don't really get involved in that design process because they have to fabricate it and manufacture it.
Right.
The only thing you're doing really here is the foundation.
Right.
Sometimes that's done by the building contractors and the main head contractors, and they have an existing relationship with engineers, and it's a pretty simple engineering task. I shouldn't downplay it. It's quite a big engineering, but it's a pole. It needs a footing, right?
Yes,
like most people
absolutely.
can do that, right? The wind farm manufacturers provide the reactions of the lateral forces they have to account for,
right?
And you've got to design a footing, right? Which is a pretty, in the scheme of it, it's a pretty straightforward engineering task.
So the wind turbine manufacturers provide the complete package. They go, you need to do this, this, and this, and the people go, okay, we'll build that foundation, and that's what.
And someone signs it off, and they go ahead with it, right?
I didn't realise.
Whereas with solar, a lot more to it. We're the actual people that are certifying how these products come to Australia, and if they meet the Australian standards, as opposed to the other way around where they're doing their own designs. They come up with a product and say, this works overseas, does it work in Australia? And we check all these aluminium extrusions and all these very weird shaped rails to make sure that they comply with a certain spacing in different wind regions and different building heights and whatever else.
That's really interesting, and because and obviously from a personal perspective, because Greenwood are involved in ground mount and roof mount and a lot of BESS stuff as well.
Absolutely.
And there's more and more BESS coming. You just have to look at and see what's in, like on LinkedIn, projects coming, and
you're doing a crazy amount.
Yeah, there's some amazing companies out there doing some wonderful things. Yep. So let's start talking nitty gritty on the roof mount.
Yeah.
Because you came in a couple of weeks ago and talked to our engineers about what to look for when it comes to actually site inspections. And something that really, really stuck with me is that 99% of people out there doing site inspections aren't really doing them properly. They may be for the electrical side, but when it comes to reporting what is structurally going on with a building, they're nowhere near up to par.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fault of our own, right? Gamcorp's own, because for a long period of time, there was a very kind of like, let's get this concept introduced of what's the importance of doing inspections and getting roof information. So we put a checklist out that had some information for people to gather, and they were quite used to that process. But then as these, and when you're doing a 50 kilowatt system on a 300 square meter roof, that could be fine. You just check the structure that's underneath that small part of the building, and you're good to go. You've got all the information you need as an engineer to complete that assessment. But what's happening now? Now they're putting a 400, 500 kilowatt system on a building that takes every square meter of that building, and they're expecting a very abbreviated inspection to kind of do the same as what was done before. And it's just not the case. We need a lot more detail now, and the people aren't providing that detail, and engineers are signing off on that lack of detail, and it's becoming a real sketchy kind of place now.
But when they sign off, that's a legally binding document, isn't it?
The irony of that, and you're right in the sense that they've got a document that says they've signed something off. But the truth of the matter is, if there's a 1 kilometre building and someone does one inspection point and an engineer says, according to the information I provided, you can install solar, right? But then something happens on site, which has happened, many times in the last few years, where a panel flies off or there's a deflection of some sort, and the engineer will quite quickly say, yeah, but this happened at this point, and the structure's completely different. I wasn't provided this information. Right, so then the liability becomes blurred. And
get out of jail.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a swindle act for sure. Whereas there's
I shouldn't laugh. Sorry.
No, you're right. There's other engineers, and not just when I say this, not Gamcorp. There's great companies out there doing great things as well, but especially Gamcorp as well, where we're just not happy to take that as an abbreviated approach. We'll help you when we can do it for you properly and make sure that everyone, including the building owner, is taken care of, not to cheap the assessment for you to slap solar on a roof where it could lead to X, Y, and Z in the future.
So is part of what Gamcorp, part of what they do and what they should do is educating the public to show that you may think our assessment is super duper conservative, but the reality is we're doing it because of this, this, and this.
Absolutely.
And now you know.
Mate, there was a time period, Valley, when, let's go back 7 years, where we said to someone, hey, you need to put a third rail in because your panel's big.
I want to ask you about this.
And they would say, you guys are crazy. I've never had to put the third rail in 20 years in engineering. You tell someone they need to put a third rail in now, they're like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. There's wind and whatever else. But that comes from countless years of pushing the industry, not just us, but our array frame partners, telling people, hey, wait a minute, your rails can't span this length under this wind pressure. You need to give them an extra rail and whatever else. That kind of educated them to a point where certain things are accepted now, but there are a lot of things that are still like, oh, I can't believe 4 rails. No, I can't do that. Like, that's ridiculous. But that's a common occurrence in the corner of a widespread building when you're trying to account for high wind loads.
That's really so. To me, when I hear about all of this, you know, with the actual roof mount solar, it's not just what the roof can hold; it's where you are attaching the structure to the roof and the weak point that is. Because I remember in this when you came along a couple of weeks ago, you're talking about the length of screws into the purlin and the purlin thicknesses. Can you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say I don't care how strong your building is. It could be the strongest building in the world, but if you put a really shitty, cheap roof sheet on top and you're connecting to it with a cheap clamp and thinking that you can get away with 2 rails, you're 100% incorrect, right? So a lot of these really beautifully designed buildings, the fixing capacity is what's critical. That racking structure that's connected to the sheeting, that clamp engagement could have a quarter of the force that it needs. And then how we account for that quarter of force is by increasing the number of clamps. And the only way you can increase the number of clamps is by adding rails. By adding rails, you introduce 2 more clamps. So it's from a fixing wind point of view. But then we get people like design engineers in the industry, God bless them, they do a great job in designing buildings, but then they don't understand these nuances and they say, yeah, we've allowed for 15 kilograms of weight for solar on this.
Yeah.
Which is great, and I'm happy for you.
And that's what I thought that was the only, until you came along.
Yeah,
that's
from
the only
a dead load
consideration.
perspective, they're 100% right. We're not questioning that. But what's critical here isn't dead load.
Yes.
What's critical here is these aluminium rails that are spanning 3 meters, for example, between purlins, or 2 meters between purlins that can't necessarily span that, connected to a clamp that has half the capacity it needs, right? So there's these nuanced elements. And then a lot of people say to me, oh, I'm using a general certificate. I'm using a general certificate to do the racking, and the building design engineer says the building's okay. But when we actually do a more deeper dive, the general certificate, as good as it is, has a lot of assumptions and abbreviations and whatever else. And sometimes people aren't even reading it right. They're putting a clip lock 700 clamp for a high strength classic Lysaght product on a Fielder's roof sheet or on a Brown build or a Stramont roof sheet, which they all have different capacities. For that reason, we're finding more and more failures are occurring around Australia. We've seen a bunch since cyclone in Queensland, as well as all around WA in the last few years as well. Like, we've seen these failures occur, and when we look at it forensically, they all have their checks and balances. Yeah, I've got this engineering report. It says it's all good, and then I look at the engineering report, and it very conveniently is excluded fixing, or like, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And the solar installer was like, what do I do now? And we have to explain that the harsh reality is that this wasn't installed based on this, and this, and the engineer hasn't provided that guidance.
And as if the end customer being, let's say, engineer, solar company, building owner or whatever, as if the building owner's going to know. He's putting his trust in the solar design and install company or the EPC, who's putting their trust in the engineer. So it's like, if you're not doing it properly, shit can hit the fan.
If I was to say anything this whole podcast, it would be, and I want you to, like, everyone to hear this.
Yeah, yes.
As a solar installer, your job isn't to guarantee the structural integrity of the building you're putting on. It's not your job. Your job is to make sure that the solar you're putting on the roof won't adversely affect the building. And you get that result, not by your own experience on how good it bounces or whatever else.
Yep.
You get an engineer involved. Push that liability to someone who can check the roof structure, check the fixing capacity, check the array frame component, and make sure that's ticked so that you're not liable. And the conversation needs to be had with the building owner. Hey, as a solar installer, I'm not responsible for your building. It's not a part of my responsibilities. It's your responsibility. It's a building owner's responsibility to ensure that the building is suitable for that solar package. So you would have the conversation to encourage the builder, the building owner or builder, to reach out to an engineer who knows the componentry of this stuff, as well as how it fixes, as well as the structural integrity of the building, to provide you a complete certificate. And I'm not saying Gamcorp is the answer. There's a bunch out there, and I can mention them, but I wouldn't mention them. But the whole point is you should trust them, right?
Yeah,
When they're doing a complete package, that's what you want. And if they tell you to put an extra rail down, it's for good reason. It's not because they like the last thing we want as engineers is to over design. It's not what we do. We want to make sure that you can put it on and make the most amount of money so that we can make money with you and we can all succeed together. But if we're saying that you have to, it's either because we don't have enough information or we need to make sure that you understand why we're saying that extra, whether it's wind or fixing or rail capacity or whatever it is. So
very interesting. It sounds to me that in a way, the solar designer should start the conversation with the structural engineer a lot earlier than they usually do.
Mate, I would say, yeah, absolutely. And I think to take it one step further, to not provide quotes and put yourself in a position where you're putting 2 rail quotes.
Yeah.
And then you come back and it's actually 4 rails. And you're like, wait, I've lost all my margin.
Yes.
Like, I completely understand how that can be completely difficult to run a business in that way. But the difficulty is that they're like that solar installer who's doing the right thing and getting engineering is competing with someone who doesn't need to do engineering or thinks that themselves they don't need to do engineering and just slap 2 rails on. So the problem isn't even the solar installer. The problem is the standards. The problem is the lack of oversight on a megawatt installation on a roof and whatever else. They don't need any checks. They're just like, yeah, I've done my electrical checks. Don't worry about structure. It's just I've been recommended to check it, but it's not a legal requirement. Like that to me is mind blowing.
Look, let's face it. You mentioned a 1 megawatt on a roof, and maybe a few years ago people go, oh, that's a huge one. Now they're putting on there's 2s, there's 2.5s, and there's probably even bigger than that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything bigger than that on a roof that you know of?
I would say majority of them now for a bigger installation is between 1 and 2 meg, and that's pretty common. It's not out of the world.
That's huge.
There are a lot of retailers that are still doing that 100 to 500 kilowatt kind of system, but if you're going for a large investment on shopping centers or large warehouses where they want to make it a grid of sorts, they're putting a megawatt as a minimum.
So now, see, if you look at residential and early commercial, they were running the rail parallel with the purlin.
Yep.
And now, in a lot of cases, you're putting the panels in a landscape and running the rail parallel to the roof sheet.
Yeah, perpendicular to the purlins.
Yes, perpendicular to the purlins.
Yeah.
Is there, from a structural engineering perspective, is one more, all other things being equal, general, is there one method that's better than the other?
Depends on your purlin spacing.
Yes. Let's assume it's a good purlin spacing to take into consideration the length of the 2 metre plus panel and the 25% where the rails come in. It's a 2-rail situation.
My personal recommendation, and I should have said this from the very start. I'm a structural engineer, but again, like I've mentioned before, there's many smarter structural engineers at Gamcorp. So when I'm saying things, it's said with a grain of salt because I'm sure that even my own engineers might say, oh, Sanna, you probably should have said this or that.
No, I'm asking your opinion. That's the thing.
And not just that, I'm sure other engineers will read this and be like, oh, this guy, this and that and whatever. But the whole point is that my personal opinion is when you're running parallel to purlins, the only limitation if we needed to add bolstered fixing, we would introduce more clamps. We would say you need clamps every 500 millimeters, which is quite a lot of clamps. You got.
Hey, steady on. We're not in Darwin, mate.
Yeah. But you're 100% right. But the point I'm making is that you have that flexibility, and the only extra cost is a clamp.
Right.
When you're running perpendicular, if you need more clamps, what do you have to do? You have to add more rails. So now you're adding more rails and 2 sets of clamps.
Well, you could do a non-penetrative though, couldn't you?
If you're doing, what do you mean by non-penetrative?
As in the feet are not penetrating the into the actual purlin.
Are you talking about a clamp of some sort?
Yeah, I'm talking clamps.
So now you're getting on a touchy topic.
Let's go back a bit.
Irrespective if it's clamp or screws, you're still on a parallel to purlin situation. You're going to have 2 rails no matter what.
Yes.
And you might need to add more feet. Instead of it being every 1.5 meters, it might be 1.2 meters. If you're running perpendicular and you need more clamps, the only way you can add that is by adding rails. Irrespective of... Now, the conversation that you want to bring up is that clip locks, you could potentially put them between purlins or off purlin is what we call them. And we've seen so many failures because of off purlin. And we have a good theory on why that shouldn't be done anymore. And not to drain too much into this, but we're in discussions with the people who write the code right now, with the greatest engineering minds in Australia, telling people, hey, did you know that people are putting clip lock clamps on roof sheet And they're saying, but it has to be on the direct supports of the structure. I said, the solar industry doesn't even know that. The solar industry doesn't know that, and your code doesn't specify that. And because of that, there's people doing off-purlin installations, and they are mind blown. They themselves are like, oh, wow, I should be going to the structure. I'm like, yeah, well, we've been screaming this for 10 years, but the truth of the matter is that'll all change very soon from the ability to be able to comfortably install off-purlin. Gamcorp hasn't certified off-purlin in probably 6-7 years.
But you could still, for instance, on purlins, distances between purlins that are fairly great, you could still do on purlin and in between off purlin.
Nah, because the ones that are in between are not doing anything. So when wind force hits that roof, the rigid parts are going to be the parts that are supported by the purlin.
Right.
And this middle part is going to bounce up and down.
Right.
It's not really providing you any support. It's just flexing with the roof sheet when it flexes up and down. Whereas the rigid parts are actually fixed in that spot and aren't going to allow for any movement.
This is very interesting,
Yeah.
Sanna, very interesting, because there's a few different rail manufacturers out there that, depending on the rail, have a slightly different maximum span. But that's almost irrelevant unless you're looking at the actual purlin spacings that match that maximum span. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is where I say generic certificates, as good as they are for, like, especially for residential, generic certificates are fantastic, right? In many ways. But when you start doing commercial projects and you're putting hundreds of panels on a roof, the difference between a slight bit is not only a huge cost difference, but it's also a huge risk difference. Like, there's a significant risk by installing off purlins that you can change the way you're installing it, not increase that much extra cost, and still be compliant with the most rigid best practice option.
Right. So again, and this comes back to maybe getting involved with your structural engineer a little bit before that contract is finally signed, because, hey, you can come undone. And look, on that note, we've had a lot of people come along to the live training who've never done commercial solar before, and they maybe do subcontract, and they go, oh, we didn't realise there was a interface protection board required, grid application, structural engineering, my God, we didn't know that, injection testing, and even on a small system, there's 15 grand or so that eats into their profit. And by the way, they quoted cheap because they didn't know what they were doing, and they lose money or at best make wages on that job.
Yeah, I've had these conversations, especially in the last 7 years. I've had these conversations like daily, if not weekly, like in modern time. And the truth of the matter is that I completely understand why they wouldn't. There isn't this due process in place. It's just the best installers, Greenwood included, have it as a part of their standard process.
Yes.
It's just tick, engineering, tick, and then they continue on. But people are coming into the space who you guys are still competing with, arguably, for these commercial projects, don't even understand. It's not even in their radar of things. So when we have these discussions, we're educating them and telling them the importance of it. But when we're really thinking about it, let's talk about a megawatt installation. How much is an engineer charging to certify that? It's under $5,000. Like, it's really, in the scheme of the cost of the project, it's really not a big cost.
It's small.
But the liability protection and the risks of your business is so different compared to, just winging it and just going out and looking at a general certificate if you're reading it correctly and installing it the way you know best.
No, that's a really good point. As a let's say, and I'll pull a figure out, like a 1.5 million for a 1 megawatt. Let's just say, right?
Sure.
Let's just say, and you're talking about $5-6 grand for. It's a very small. It's like 3.5%, if
Not
that.
even.
Whatever.
Yeah,
my maths.
yeah.
Whatever. Okay, so if you're talking penetrative versus non-penetrative, obviously
Screws.
is number one when it comes to strength. Because
It depends. And I think generally you can make that statement.
Yes.
Screws, God bless them, these little things, they're so bloody strong, and we're really happy when we see it's a screwed roof sheet. The negative is the capacity of the screw is dependent on what you're screwing into.
Well, this is the thing. It's weakest link. I mean, you were talking about hardwood in the when you came
hardwood's
in.
great.
But we're not seeing hardwood anymore.
Of course
we're seeing metal purlins, and they're designed to wear this much, and they're one point whatever mil they are.
But hear me out.
You've only got one go on them too.
1.5 mil, pretty good. 1.9 mil, pretty good. I'm actually pretty okay with those. The capacity of a 1.5 mil purlin with a screw is comparable to a clamp, right? Or to a stronger clamp even.
Right.
The problem we have is when it's a top hat, like when it's a 0.5 0.55 or 0.75 millimeter shed kind of, the top hats, they look like upside down U's. They're the ones that we have issues with from a fixing point. But from from structural steel, if you got 1.5, 1.9, 2.4 is bloody awesome. Like you're getting really good fixing capacity. So I think just in general, when you see screws, it makes the assessment a lot more secure. It's a lot. You're not going to worry about the torquing loose of the clamps and whatever else. It's a nice mechanical fix to the roof structure. When you're looking at clamps, there's 100 things that go wrong. The inner clamp of the roof sheet, there's a little clip that holds that roof sheet to the roof.
Right.
Is that in good nick? Is the roof sheet itself in good nick? Is the torque on your clamps across 10,000 clamps in good nick? Right, there's a lot of extra failing points there compared to screw going in, 1.5 mil capacity, etc.
You can be careful here, but have you seen, and don't say where, of course, have you seen situations where someone has done, I won't say non-penetrative, non-screwed situation where the sheet and the rail and the panels are being...
Yeah, so I'll say this, and Gamcorp, we're blessed to be in a position where we are quite trusted with a lot of really great installers. A lot of them are engaged to fix problems, and problems that occur are in a high wind scenario, panels dislodging, rails, splices falling apart, whatever the failure mode is. They have to go to an engineer to give a kind of like a forensic outlook on what the situation is. We've been blessed to be a part of that many times in the recent years, and what that has given us is the ability to learn from these failures. The problem with it, Belly, is that there's so many NDAs behind all these, right? Because they're like, I don't want anyone.
Reason. Sure.
Look, I understand the business reason. I'd love to just blank out all that and just say, hey, industry, wake up, have a look at this, have a look at this splice, have a look at this off purl, and have a look at this clamp disengagement, just to show that there's learnings we can get from these failures. But speaking now transparently, absolutely. Have we seen it? Yeah, we've seen in Victoria as wind region A, one of the lowest wind regions. Yeah,
wow.
Mate, in bloody Altona, like it's come off this year.
Altona's windy though.
Oh, come on. It's still wind region A, right? Like it's still not that crazy compared to Queensland or anything, right?
Yeah.
And they see it as, it's not that windy, so I'm going to, 2 rails, off purl and whatever it is, I'm using this racking provider and they've said it's okay. Then we go and look at it and it's, mate, very not okay. Like not only have the sheets disengaged, the clamps have disengaged, the panels have dislodged. Look, there's cases, and I'm not going to mention anything here, but there's cases on a high-rise building where we've lost 2 panels and we don't know where it is.
Oh, no.
Mate, we don't know where it is. I'm praying that it's in the river. Like I'm praying that it's in the river because these are serious problems. And fortunately, knock on wood, like we weren't, and like we're not going to be on the hook for anything, or it's not a part of Gamcorp. We're going in and looking at it, but saying, hey, have you guys installed this right? And have you guys engineered this correctly? And I will say this, majority of the time, how do I say this the best way possible? When something goes wrong, when you're looking at how it goes wrong, there's only 2 ways you can do it. You can look at how it was designed and see if that passes. If the design passes, then it can't be about the design. It has to be something that's happened on site, whether it's loose torques or whatever. A lot of the times it's been designed okay. I can't say that consistently it's engineering problem. It's not. A lot of the times it's workmanship, and I would say the majority of them is workmanship, whether it's they haven't followed the guidance of the general certificates or the site-specific certificates. A lot of the time it's tradespeople mistakes that have led to this. But the truth of the matter is there are cases that are engineering mistakes as well, or that ambiguity where they assess the roof structure but not the fixing or whatever it is. So I just need it. If I can only just know the failures are occurring a lot. Right. And I'd love to be able to speak freely about it. There's a period of time with these NDAs when they elapse, mate. I'm telling you now, I'm screaming.
Yeah, but you'll have a low white beard by then.
Yeah, probably. But I'll tell you what, there's a really good mob. I just met with him a couple of weeks ago. I just found him on LinkedIn and I reached out to him. They're called the Solar Repairman. Steve's the mob. I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen him on LinkedIn, Bloody
awesome guys as well. Like we had a really good chat with them in our office a few weeks back and they're like, mate, we've seen it all. We've seen panels come off. We've seen this. Even today, they had a post where panels are disengaged. So it's luckily they're there to repair the situation. So they're posting it freely. But on a commercial property, before you even get the call, it's, hey mate, do you mind sending this NDA? I need your help on this confidential situation. Shit. Like, it's not a good situation because I want to be able to learn from
You're
it.
going to make yourself a stamp for those NDAs.
Honestly, right? Honestly.
It seems like when you're looking at the rail manufacturers, they're just worried about, okay, if I put a foot here and I put a foot here, 1,500 apart, I can support this amount of weight, right?
Yep.
That's all they're worried about. But then obviously they can't see what building they're going on and the nitty gritty. What kind of relationship and conversation do you have with the and without saying who they are, and there's only a few, what kind of conversations do you have with the rail manufacturers about this whole area?
Look, I would say most of the rail manufacturers aren't just considering dead loads. They have an understanding of wind.
Good.
And a lot of their general certificates, and the reason they pay quite a lot of money for these general certificates is to check it against different wind regions, different building heights and whatever else. That's predominantly because of wind. It's actually not including the structure at all.
Right,
It's just looking at the racking's ability to counter wind pressures. So they're quite familiar with the negative, like the weak point of their system, right? They're familiar with enough to be able to ask the right questions to us. And then we provide them guidance. We say, oh, you can't put your splice here. You got to have a fixing every limitation of 1.2 meters or whatever else. But the truth of the matter is that they don't really know anything about what it's being connected to, like the structure.
Well, that's
itself.
the thing, isn't it? You can't. They don't know.
They shouldn't know because that's not their job.
That's
They're
not their
here
job.
to provide
Exactly.
aluminium railing.
Yeah.
That's far cheaper than building a steel structure to support panels.
Yes.
Use their racking. It's so much cheaper,
course.
right? So they've provided a really good product, very efficient in its material use to get it for you to put it on a roof really cheap, lift it up really easy, whatever else. But the expectation for them to be responsible for the building structure, it's not their response. It's not even the solar person's responsibility. It's the building owner's responsibility.
Absolutely, yeah.
It becomes an education process. And again, that early conversation to say, hey, this is what it would cost me with this racking, with this panel. If your building's okay, this will be the price. If it's not okay, we've got to get guidance from an engineer and they will tell us if we need to modify this system. And if we need to modify the system, it's likely going to increase the cost because your building can't handle it the way we would typically want to install it. So it becomes an education process. And the better installers are having those conversations, and then the building owners are actually respecting that more than the guy who says, yeah, I'll put it all on for 2 rails. If you're coming in with that same quote and really educating them and saying, hey, we can do it at that same quote, but I want to get an engineer to make sure you're safe, your people are safe, and everything's secured, mate, you're going to win more jobs coming out that conversation correctly than trying to get in cheap.
No, you're dead right. An interesting thing you said a couple of weeks ago was the whole east-west configuration scenario where you've got these systems that are going on, let's say a north-facing section of the roof, and they're not putting 100 on, they're putting 400 or 500 up to 1 megawatt, and the effect it can have on the other side of the roof if there's no weight. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, it's in our training. I'd love to go through the training in more detail with everyone here, but when we're looking at portal frame structures with no internal columns, right? So it looks like effectively 2 columns and 2 rafters. They're designed to be one full extended beam with little folds in them effectively. And the folds are in the form of welds and nuts and whatever else. But the difference between a portal frame and a normal build is that that beam is considered effectively one piece of steel, the way the forces react to it. So if you load one side of the roof, God bless solar installers, they love the north face of the roof. If they just load up the north face and they cover the whole area with panels, now you're adding this kind of like elongated load. And if you're thinking about a triangle, if you push one side of the triangle, the other side of the triangles want to kind of pop out.
Yes.
So that's the whole point. The whole point we say, I don't care if you put bricks on the other side, but I just need it to be a kind of evenly loaded. Or at least a ratio of like 2 to 1 or something. Because if you just only load the north face and your portal frame has no internal columns where you can kind of separate it, then you're putting significant pressure on the columns, the other side of the rafter, all the connection points, more than the building was designed for. And I think every time we're talking about what was the building designed for versus how we're using it now.
It was never designed for
solar.
It was never designed for that.
Solar to not on one side, right? So that's the problem. It's not to say that it can't be done, but it's a check you should check out because it could be okay, but it'd be right on the border if it was. And we would encourage you to chuck some panels on that south face roof, even though they might not be efficient or like the most desirable electrically, it's so much better for the structure. It's so much better for the age of the structure over 20 years.
What kind of education does Gamcorp offer, the designers out there? Like, I know you've got a bit of a program. And,
absolutely.
And so, number one, what kind of program have you got?
Yep.
And number two, how are you actually, how are you implementing it out and how are you getting it out there? Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have commercial training for commercial solar installers. It's at no cost to the commercial solar installers. We break it into a few parts, and only some, like most people do the project management training. And the project management training is, you're a designer or a project manager of a large solar installation, you're going to be consulting with a structural engineer. And when you consult with a structural engineer, best to kind of understand what we're doing, even if it's just holistically, like just above board. So when we have these conversations, we say, hey, wait a minute, you might need an extra rail. You understand what that means, like why you need an extra rail. These images and these diagrams we go through kind of explain the difference between screw fixing and concealed clamps and wind zones and corner zones. And these are all engineering problems. But for a solar person, it's not critical for you to know, but it's really good to understand. When I look at this report, that's why they're doing this, right? That's why I need extra rails and whatever else. So the project manager training is really good for anyone who's actually installing stuff or designing stuff. Then we have a different set of training, how to actually go out on site and effectively do a site measure.
And that's for commercial solar design team?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And then we have post-installation checks. Like if you want to make sure you've installed the system, but you want to make sure it's been installed correctly, what checks would an engineer do? You can do them yourself. You don't have to have an engineer come out and do it. It's probably good due diligence to do it yourself on every project anyway.
Wow.
Explaining the loosening of torques over time based on vibration. Do you auditly go yearly and check your installs? Like that's a good thing to do because bolts across every industry in Australia loosen. But in the steel industry, it's very common. But in the solar industry, it's not a common thing that people do, right? So we just help educate these like concepts. And then lastly, sales training, right? You've got sales teams who are offering 100% of the roof area at 2 rails, right? So we give training at a very early stage to say, hey, these are the types of conversations you have with a client. We give tools that give, for example, internal zones, 2 rails, edge zones, 3 rails, corner zones, 5 rails, or whatever, or maybe not suitable.
Yeah. Stay away from the corner zones.
So when you're giving a quote, you're actually quoting probably more accurately for your guys, your PMs later on.
I think all the training you mentioned is incredibly important. How can someone get? I mean, and also we've had a few discussions about maybe combining some trainings in the future. We'll definitely have to move on that quickly. But right now, someone listening to this podcast, how can they get in contact with to Gamcorp to actually get some training happening and
best email is solar@gamcorp.com.au. You send an email saying, hey, I've got a team of 5. I want to get the PM training done. And these are the types of projects we do. Want to know a bit about this? Usually the response you'll get is, what type of projects you do? Do you have any specific questions or any concerns? The reason we do it is to establish that relationship so that they understand the need for structural. And then also it helps facilitate those conversations later on, right? Yep. When people know how much it de-risks them for the price that you're getting it for, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Right? And for that reason, if you can teach them how to have that conversation with building owner, that training becomes critical. So contact solar@gamcorp.com.au. Just reach out and ask for Sanna, and we can definitely facilitate it. We like to say groups of 5.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you're a solar company who's not a group of 5, ask your mates, ask your contractors, right? Whoever you have is in the space. Let's get a group together. We can even, if we have enough interest, we'll run a webinar and make it open for everyone.
And these are free events.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It's for the benefit of having a more holistic understanding, educating the industry, so that we're all better. Like it's not about, like I like to say this: there's a million things you guys got to worry about, right? Like electrically and physically and distribution and whatever else. We're such a small part, but do it right and you're secure. Do it wrong, and it doesn't matter how good your cables are. It doesn't matter how good.
That's exactly right.
So for that reason, like we'd like to say, let's at least understand it. I won't say appreciate it, but let's at least understand it, and then you might see the value in it long term.
Have you got some final words for the people listening about the whole commercial solar. And we didn't even talk about ground mounting.
Honestly,
we ran out of time. But have you got any final words of advice for anyone who is, involved in commercial solar, whether it's ground mount, roof mount, what they, from a structural engineering perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Like my whole thing and what I've been pushing, I shouldn't say Gamcorp has been pushing, is understand your responsibility, understand what you're liable for, and de-risk yourself as much as possible. And that doesn't mean just doing a Ray-frame certificate, or it doesn't mean just doing a structural assessment. Do a combined certificate. I don't care which engineer provides it, but get them to do a certificate of the racking, the fixing, and the roof structure.
Yeah, wow.
They're the 3 things you need. And if you get that, then good on you. Go ahead and install and you're loving life. But if you only get one of those, when something goes wrong, you're not covered. I don't care what anyone says. There's always a reason why one is more critical than the other, or whatever else. So there's a big problem there. And if you're ever in trouble, give us a call. Like, I'd be happy to help out, provide some guidance on how to rectify it, or at least provide a report on why it happened in the first place.
Thanks so much. That was wonderful.
No, all good.
Yes, no, that was really good. No, appreciate it.